Commander Lisa Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stared at the screens in front of her. The command center of New Harmony Colony was falling apart around her. Sparks flew from broken control panels and the lights flickered on and off. Outside, she could hear the terrible sounds of the attack getting closer. The Vorthok had come from nowhere. One day, the colonists were mining precious metals from the planet's rich deposits, and the next day, these bug-like creatures were pouring out of holes in the ground like angry ants. But these weren't tiny insects. Each Vorthok was the size of a grown man, with sharp claws that could cut through metal and teeth that could bite through bone. Lisa had been a soldier before she became a colony commander. She knew how to fight, and so did many of her people. But there were just too many enemies. For every bug they killed, 10 more came crawling out of the underground tunnels. "Commander, the east wall is down," shouted Lieutenant Jake Morrison from across the room. His uniform was torn and bloody, and his left arm hung useless at his side. Families there are pulling back to the community center. Lisa nodded grimly. The community center was their last safe building. It had thick walls and good doors, but it wouldn't hold forever. She looked at the tactical display on her main screen. Red dots showed enemy positions all around the colony. There were thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. "How many people do we have left?" she asked. "About 800 civilians in the community center," Jake replied. "Maybe 50 security guards still fighting, scattered around the colony. And us." Lisa closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her decision was made. She walked to the communications console and began typing a message. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard as explosions echoed outside. The message was addressed to the Galactic Assistance Council. Lisa had never liked dealing with the alien bureaucrats who ran the council, but they were humanity's best hope for getting help quickly. She needed to be careful about how she wrote the message. The council preferred to help what they called peaceful species, and they didn't like military action. "To the Galactic Assistance Council Emergency Response Division," she typed. Is Commander Lisa Martinez of the New Harmony? Agricultural colony on Kepler 4, 4 to B. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces and request immediate humanitarian assistance. She paused, thinking carefully about her next words. The truth was that New Harmony wasn't really an agricultural colony. Yes, they grew some food, but mainly they were miners and their families. Many of the colonists were former soldiers who had come here to start new lives after their service ended. They had weapons, and they knew how to use them. But telling the council that might make them think New Harmony was a military base instead of a colony that needed help. "Our population consists primarily of civilian families with children," she continued typing. "We have limited defensive capabilities and are facing overwhelming numbers. Many of our people are wounded, and we desperately need medical evacuation. We are willing to abandon the colony completely if safe transport can be provided." Lisa read the message again. It was mostly true. They did have civilian families with children. They were facing overwhelming numbers, and they would abandon the colony if they had to. She just didn't mention that the civilians included people like Betty White, who had been a sniper in the Proxima border wars, or Danny Carter, who used to teach survival skills to Special Forces soldiers. "Send it," she told Jake. The message shot out into space, traveling faster than light through the quantum communication network that connected all the human colonies to each other and to the Galactic Council. Lisa hoped it would reach someone who could help them soon. Through the command center's windows, she could see fires burning across the colony. The Vorthok moved in groups, working together like a real army. They weren't just mindless bugs. They had tactics and strategy. Some of them carried weapons that looked like they were grown instead of built, firing green energy blasts that could melt through steel. Commander called Sergeant Amy Reeves from the door. Amy was one of their best security officers, a tough woman who had served with Lisa in the Marines before they both came to New Harmony. "We've got maybe an hour before they break through to the community center. After that, she didn't need to finish. After that, 800 people would die." Lisa looked around the command center one more time. This place had been her home. For 3 years, she'd watched the colony grow from a small outpost to a thriving community. The colonists had built schools and shops, gardens and playgrounds. Children had been born here. Couples had gotten married. It was supposed to be a peaceful place where people could start over. But peace was a luxury that required strength to maintain. And they didn't have enough strength for this fight. "Jake, can you boost the signal on our distress beacon?" she asked. "All ready." "Done, Commander. It's broadcasting on all emergency frequencies." Elisa nodded. The beacon would keep sending their location and status even if the command center fell. Maybe someone would hear it. Maybe someone would come. The building shook as something heavy hit the outer wall. Dust fell from the ceiling, and more sparks flew from the damaged equipment. Lisa could hear the Vorthok outside, making their strange clicking and hissing sounds as they communicated with each other. "Ma'am," Jake said quietly, "there's something else. I've been monitoring their communications. The bugs, ... they're not just trying to kill us. They're trying to capture us alive." Lisa felt her blood turn cold. "What do you mean? The energy weapons they're using, they're set to stun, not kill? And I saw them carrying unconscious colonists back to their tunnels. I think they're taking prisoners." Implications hit Lisa like a punch to the stomach. The Vorthok weren't just invading the colony. They were harvesting the human population. For what purpose, she didn't want to think about. She turned back to the communications console and sent another message. This one to Earth's Defense Command. It was shorter and much more direct. "Hey, this is New Harmony Colony. We are under attack by hostile aliens. They are taking prisoners. Send help immediately. Send everything you have." Then she picked up her rifle and checked the ammunition. If the Galactic Council wanted to send diplomats and medical ships, that was fine. But Lisa had a feeling that what New Harmony really needed was soldiers. Outside, the clicking and hissing grew louder. The Vorthok were getting closer. In the community center, 800 people waited for rescue, not knowing that help was already on the way from two very different sources. The galaxy was about to learn something important about humans. When they called for help, they weren't always looking for the gentle touch of civilization. Sometimes they needed the hard edge of war. And war was something humans understood very well. The message from New Harmony Colony reached the Galactic Assistance Council headquarters on Altair Prime exactly 4 hours and 12 minutes after Commander Martinez sent it. The massive space station orbited the peaceful blue world that served as the center of galactic civilization, its crystal towers gleaming in the light of twin suns. Zephyr, the lead coordinator for emergency response, received the alert on his personal display while reviewing 17 other crisis reports from across the galaxy. His tall, thin body moved gracefully as he shifted in his chair, his large purple eyes scanning the text. The Altarians were known throughout the galaxy for their calm, thoughtful approach to problems. "Another human colony in distress," he said. To his assistant, a young Centaurian named Velcor, whose green skin showed the worry patterns typical of his species. These humans certainly choose dangerous places to build their settlements. Velcor pulled up the file on New Harmony Colony. Agricultural community established 3 years ago. Population of approximately 1,000, mostly families. They report an attack by unknown hostiles and request evacuation assistance. Zephyr nodded slowly. This was not unusual. The Galactic Council dealt with similar situations every month. New species like humans often settled in systems they didn't fully understand, then found themselves in conflict with local life forms or territorial disputes with established civilizations. "What do we know about these Vorthok they mention?" Zephyr asked. Velcor's fingers danced across his console, pulling up files from the galactic database. The Vorthok Collective is a mining confederation based in the Outer Spiral. They've had territorial disputes before, but these are usually resolved through negotiation. They prefer to avoid direct conflict with council member species. Standard response protocol then, Zephyr decided. Prepare a Mercy fleet with medical facilities and evacuation transport. Contact the Vorthok Collective leadership and request an immediate ceasefire while we arrange peaceful relocation of the human colonists. This was how the Galactic Council always handled these situations. Most conflicts in civilized space came from misunderstandings or resource disputes. A few conversations between reasonable beings could usually solve any problem. The galaxy had been at peace for over 200 years. Using these methods, Velcor began sending messages to various departments throughout the station. The medical corps would prepare hospital ships. Transportation division would ready civilian evacuation vessels. The diplomatic service would contact the Vorthok leadership to arrange a peaceful solution. How long until the fleet can depart? Zefter asked. 3 days to assemble the ships and crews, then 4 days travel time to reach the human colony, Velcor replied. The Vorthok collective leadership has agreed to meet with our diplomats tomorrow to discuss terms. Sefta was satisfied with this timeline. 7 days was actually quite fast for a council response. Most emergency situations were resolved through careful negotiation long before any ships needed to arrive. The important thing was to avoid hasty action that might make the situation worse. The Mercy fleet that began assembling at Altair Prime was impressive by galactic standards. The hospital ship Gentle Dawn was the most advanced medical facility in this sector of space, capable of treating any known injury or disease. 3 large passenger ships, normally used for luxury tourism, were quickly converted to carry refugees. 2 peacekeeping frigates would provide escort, though their weapons were designed more for show than actual combat. Captain Silarea of the Gentle Dawn reviewed her orders while her crew prepared for departure. The elderly Altarian had overseen 47 successful evacuations during her long career. She had never lost a single refugee under her care. Medical teams prepare for possible trauma cases, she announced over the ship's communication system. Based on the reports, we may be dealing with frightened civilians who have witnessed violence. Psychological support will be as important as physical treatment. Meanwhile, the diplomatic team led by Ambassador Tilron was already in communication. With the Vorthok collective, Cetoid species had built their civilization around mining operations, expanding slowly through star systems rich in rare minerals. They were not known for aggressive behavior toward other species. The humans appear to have established their colony and system, the Vorthok considered part of their traditional territory. Ambassador Tilron explained to his team, "This is clearly a territorial misunderstanding. Once we relocate the humans to a more suitable world, both species can continue their development without conflict." The Vorthok representatives seemed confused by the diplomatic contact. Their responses came slowly and were difficult to understand. The translator systems had trouble with their clicking and hissing language, especially when multiple Vorthok tried to speak at the same time. "We harvest what grows," came one translated message. "The soft ones provide good nutrients for expansion." Ambassador Tilron frowned at this translation. It must be an error in the computer systems. The Vorthok were obviously talking about mining rights and resource extraction, not anything involving the human colonists directly. 3 days passed while the council fleet prepared for departure. The ships were loaded with medical supplies, food, temporary shelters, and everything needed to relocate 1,000 human refugees. Counselors trained in dealing with traumatized civilians came aboard. Teachers prepared to help human children continue their education during the relocation process. On the 4th day, the Mercy fleet finally departed from Altair Prime. The 5 ships moved slowly through space, their crews confident that they would arrive to find the situation already improving thanks to diplomatic efforts. Captain Silarea spent the journey reviewing everything known about human biology and psychology. Humans were still relatively new to galactic civilization, having only made contact 40 years ago. They seemed to adapt well to different environments, but they also appeared more prone to settling in dangerous locations than most species. Humans appear to have evolved on what they call a death world, she read from her files. Their planet Earth has extreme weather, dangerous predators, and frequent natural disasters. This may explain their tendency to view risk differently than other galactic species. The medical captain made notes about possible treatments for what humans called post-traumatic stress. She had dealt with similar conditions in other species, though humans seemed to have unusual reactions to violence and danger. Back on New Harmony, the colonists knew nothing about the fleet slowly approaching their world. Commander Martinez had received only a brief acknowledgement from the Galactic Council saying help was on the way. No timeline, no details about what kind of help, but the message had also reached Earth Defense Command. and the response from humanity's military was very different from the Council's careful preparations. Admiral Kate Sullivan read the situation. Report in her office overlooking Earth's Pacific Ocean. The former Marine had spent 30 years fighting in the colonial wars that had established humanity's place in the galaxy. She understood something. The peaceful aliens of the Council did not. These aren't negotiations, she told her staff. The Vorthok aren't trying to relocate our people. They're harvesting them, within 6 hours of receiving Martinez's message. Admiral Sullivan had 3 assault ships loading with Marines and supplies. Unlike the Council's Mercy Fleet, these were warships built for one purpose: fighting and winning battles in space and on hostile worlds. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans called for help, sometimes they needed more than gentle medical care and peaceful relocation. Sometimes they needed soldiers who understood that there were enemies in the universe who could not be negotiated with. The race to new harmony had begun, and 2 very different kinds of rescue were now heading toward the embattled colony. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the war room deep inside Earth Defense Command, watching the holographic display that showed the location of New Harmony Colony. Red warning lights flashed around the room as officers moved quickly between computer stations. The Admiral's weathered face showed the anger she felt as she read the latest intelligence reports. 6 days, she said, her voice cold as space ice. The Council says they need 6 days to get their Mercy ships to New Harmony. By then, there won't be anyone left to rescue. Her aide, Colonel Ben Parker, stood beside the display table with a tablet full of data. Ma'am, we've been monitoring Vorthak communications since we received the distress call. These aren't territorial disputes. The bugs are talking about harvest quotas and biomass processing. They're treating our people like livestock. Admiral Sullivan had fought against alien raiders during the Outer Colony Wars. She knew the difference between enemies who wanted your land and enemies who wanted to eat you. The Vorthok belonged to the second group. What's our fastest response option? She asked. The Rapid Response Fleet is already preparing for departure, Colonel Parker replied. 3 ships, the heavy assault carrier Vengeance under Captain Rick Harrison, and 2 Marine transports, Thunder Bay and Iron Wolf. They can be ready to leave in 12 hours. Make it 6 hours, Sullivan ordered, and load them with everything. These colonists are going to need more than medical supplies and kind words. Captain Rick Harrison received his orders while his ship was still being loaded with supplies. The Vengeance was a massive warship, built specifically for the kind of fighting that happened on worlds where humans tried to make new homes. Her fighter bays could hold 60 attack craft. Her weapons could crack open asteroids or reduce cities to ash. Harrison had commanded the Vengeance for 8 years, fighting pirates and alien raiders across the outer systems. His crew wasn't made up of diplomats or peace negotiators. They were soldiers who had learned to fight in the vacuum of space and on worlds where the air itself could kill most alien species. All department heads to the bridge, Harrison announced over the ships. Communication system. We have a colony under attack and people dying. This is not a rescue mission. This is war. In the Marine bays of the Thunder Bay and Iron Wolf, Colonel Amy Reeves was addressing her troops. The 3rd Expeditionary Battalion was made up of men and women who specialized in exactly this kind of operation, dropping onto hostile worlds and eliminating threats to human colonies. Intelligence says we're facing an insectoid species that fights in large groups, she told her Marines. They use bioweapons, and they've been taking prisoners for unknown purposes. Our job is simple. Kill every bug on that planet and bring our people home. Sergeant Danny Carter checked his equipment while listening to the briefing. He had fought in the cave systems of Titan and the underground cities of Europa. Fighting bugs in tunnels was something he understood very well. His squad specialized in close-quarters combat in confined spaces, using explosives and tactics that would terrify most civilized species. Sarge, what kind of weapons are we bringing? Private Tony Martinez, a young Marine on his first deployment. Everything, Danny replied grimly. Plasma rifles, sonic grenades, thermal charges, and a few surprises the aliens won't expect. These bugs picked the wrong species to mess with. Lieutenant Rachel Kim was in the Vengeance's tactical center, studying every piece of information they had about the Vorthok and their fighting methods. As the ship's weapons officer, she would coordinate the orbital bombardment that would support the Marines on the ground. "Their tunnels run deep," she told her team, "but our deep strike missiles can reach them. We just need to be careful not to hit our own people." The human fleet departed Earth exactly 5 hours and 43 minutes after Admiral Sullivan gave the order. 3 ships carrying 1,500 Marines, 60 fighter craft, and enough firepower to level a small moon. They moved through space at speeds that would have been impossible for most alien species to survive, using acceleration that would crush fragile bodies, while the Galactic Council's Mercy fleet was still 2 days away from New Harmony. The human warships were already pushing their engines beyond safe limits. Captain Harrison had his engineers override every safety system to squeeze more speed from the Vengeance's massive engines. "Captain, we're running the reactor at 115%, reported his chief engineer, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Stone. "At this rate, we'll reach the colony in 36 hours, but we risk engine failure." "Keep pushing," Harrison ordered. "Those colonists don't have time for us to worry about engine safety." The ships tore through hyperspace like bullets, leaving trails of energy that would be visible to sensors across 3 star systems. This wasn't a careful, diplomatic approach. This was an attack force moving at maximum speed toward a target. On New Harmony, Commander Martinez was fighting a losing battle to keep her people alive. The Vorthok had broken through the outer defenses and were now attacking the community center where the last 800 colonists had taken shelter. The building's walls were holding but barely. "Jake, how long until the council ships arrive?" she asked Lieutenant Morrison. 3 days, maybe 4, he replied while reloading his rifle. "But I'm picking up something else on long-range sensors. 3 large ships moving fast toward our system. They're not broadcasting council identification codes." Martinez felt a surge of hope. Human ships. Has to be. Nothing else moves that fast or runs that hot. Outside the community center, the Vorthok were setting up what looked like drilling equipment. The bugs weren't trying to break down the doors anymore. They were going to dig through the walls. Betty White, the grandmother who had been a sniper in 3 different wars, watched the aliens through a crack in the wall. At 72 years old, she still had steady hands and sharp eyes. She was teaching 8-year-old Tommy Chen how to load ammunition magazines. "Remember, boy," she told him quietly, "when the real soldiers get here, we help them any way we can. Until then, we hold this place." Across the colony, other groups of colonists were fighting their own battles. These weren't helpless refugees waiting for rescue. They were former soldiers, miners, engineers, and their families who had come to the frontier because they wanted to build something new. They knew how to fight, and they were fighting hard. But there were just too many enemies. For every Vorthok they killed, more came pouring out of the underground tunnels. The bugs seemed to have an endless supply of warriors, and they were getting smarter about their attacks. The Vorthok had also started using human prisoners in disturbing ways. Some colonists reported seeing their captured neighbors being used as shields by advancing bug warriors. Others spoke of strange sounds coming from the tunnel entrances, sounds that might have been human voices calling for help. Martinez knew they couldn't hold out much longer. The community center was strong, but the Vorthok drilling equipment would eventually break through. When that happened, 800 people would be trapped with nowhere to run. She sent one final message to the approaching ships, not knowing if they were human or alien. "This is New Harmony. We are in our final defensive position. Whatever you are, whoever you are, please hurry. We don't have much time left." The message traveled through space to reach the human fleet. Just as Captain Harrison's ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, the Vengeance's sensors immediately detected the Vorthok ships in orbit around the colony world and the massive underground hive complex that stretched for hundreds of miles beneath the surface. "All ships, this is Captain Harrison," came the announcement across the fleet. "We are weapons free. No prisoners, no negotiation, no mercy. These bugs wanted to hunt humans. Now they get to learn what it means when humans hunt back." The battle for New Harmony began at exactly 347 hours ship time, when Captain Harrison's fighter squadron screamed into the planet's atmosphere at speeds that turned them into burning meteors. The Vorthok had never seen anything move so fast. Through an atmosphere, most alien species needed careful approach vectors and gentle deceleration to avoid being crushed by their own acceleration. Human pilots flew like they were born to dance with death. Lieutenant Alex Stone led Fighter Squadron 7 in the first attack run, his craft diving toward the surface at an angle that would have killed most galactic species. The G-forces that pressed against his body were something he had trained for since childhood on Earth, where gravity was stronger than most inhabited worlds. "Target the big hive entrances," he told his pilots over the radio. "Light them up with everything we have." The fighters unleashed their weapons in coordinated strikes that turned the tunnel openings into lakes of molten rock. Plasma cannons and missile salvos pounded the Vorthok positions, while the bugs tried desperately to return fire with their bioweapons. But the human craft were too fast and too unpredictable for the aliens to track. Above the planet, Captain Harrison watched the tactical display from the Vengeance's bridge. The Vorthok had orbital ships, but they were designed for transport and mining, not combat. They died quickly under the heavy guns of the human warships. "Colonel Reeves, you have air superiority," Harrison announced to the Marine commander. "Begin landing operations." Colonel Amy Reeves stood in the drop pod bay of the Thunder Bay, checking her equipment one final time. Around her, 300 Marines prepared for what they called a hot drop, landing directly into combat zones using armored pods that could punch through enemy defenses. "Remember, people," she called out to her troops, "these bugs have been eating our families. Show them what happens when they mess with humans." The drop pods launched from the Marine transports like a metal rainstorm. Each pod contained 5 fully armed Marines and enough firepower to level a city block. They hit the planet's surface so hard that seismic sensors registered the impacts as earthquake activity. Sergeant Danny Carter's pod crashed through the roof of a Vorthok breeding chamber deep underground. The impact killed dozens of bugs instantly and sent the survivors scrambling in panic. Danny and his squad came out shooting, their weapons lighting up the darkness with deadly energy. "Move fast. Stay together," Danny ordered his men. "These tunnels connect to the main hive. We need to clear them before the bugs can regroup." The Marines moved through the underground complex like they owned it. They used explosives that the Galactic Council had banned as too dangerous, clearing entire tunnel sections with controlled detonations. Their armor could withstand the Vorthok bioweapons, and their training let them fight effectively in the dark. Cramped spaces where the aliens lived. Private Tony Martinez threw a sonic grenade around a corner, then followed it with plasma rifle. Fire that cut down 6 Vorthok warriors before they could recover from the stunning blast. "Sarge, these bugs don't seem so tough when they can't surround us." Above ground, Lieutenant Rachel Kim coordinated orbital bombardment from the Vengeance's weapons station. Her targeting systems identified major hive complexes beneath the surface, and she sent deep strike missiles into the planet's crust to collapse entire sections of the underground city. "Penetration depth, 3 kilometers, she reported to Captain Harrison. "The bugs are trying to retreat deeper, but we're sealing their escape routes." The precision of the human attack amazed even the Marines on the ground. Every missile strike hit exactly where it was supposed to, collapsing enemy positions without harming the advancing troops. This kind of three-dimensional warfare was something humans had learned fighting in the asteroid belts and gas giant storms of their home system at the community center. Commander Martinez heard the explosions getting closer and realized that rescue had finally arrived. She opened the emergency communication channel and heard voices she recognized, human voices speaking with Earth's accents. "This is Sergeant Danny Carter, 3rd Marine Battalion. Any humans in the community center? Sound off. This is Commander Martinez. We have 800 civilians in here, including wounded. The bugs are trying to drill through our walls." "Copy that, Commander. Stay put. We're coming to get you." Danny's squad fought their way through the colony's main street, eliminating Vorthok positions with brutal efficiency. The bugs had set up defensive positions in human buildings, but they hadn't expected enemies who fought like the Marines did, where the Vorthok used careful tactics and coordinated group attacks. The humans used speed, overwhelming firepower, and a willingness to take risks that would terrify most species. "Flash bang out," called Private Martinez as he threw a grenade into a building full of Vorthok warriors. The explosion stunned the bugs long enough for the squad to storm inside, finish them off with close-range weapons fire. When the Marines reached the community center, they found that the colonists had already started fighting back. Betty White had organized the other former soldiers into defensive positions, and they were shooting at any Vorthok that came too close to the building. "Ma'am," Danny said to the elderly sniper, "we're here to get you out." "About time," Betty replied, not taking her eyes off her rifle scope. "These bugs killed my neighbor, Mrs. Peterson. I've been keeping count of how many I've shot since then. Up to 43 now." Danny looked at the woman with new respect. Most civilian refugees would be crying and helpless by now. This grandmother was treating the battle like a hunting trip. The rescue of the community center took exactly 27 minutes. The Marines formed a protective circle around the building, while Colonel Reeves organized transport shuttles to carry the colonists to safety. But many of the colonists didn't want to leave immediately. Commander said a man named Carl Johnson, who had been a combat engineer before becoming a colonist, "My workshop has tools and supplies your people might need. And I know where the bugs have been taking prisoners." This was something the Marines hadn't expected. Most species they had rescued before were eager to get as far away from combat as possible. These humans wanted to help with the fighting. "Sir, we appreciate the offer, but civilian safety is our priority," Colonel Reeves told the colonists. Colonel Commander Martinez interrupted. "With respect, we're not helpless civilians. We're colonists who've been defending our home. 3 days against impossible odds. We know this place better than anyone, and we know where the bugs are keeping our people." Colonel Reeves realized she was dealing with something different from the usual rescue operation. These weren't refugees who needed protection. They were fellow fighters who wanted revenge. The combined force of Marines and colonists swept through New Harmony like a storm. The colonists guided the troops to hidden Vorthok positions and secret tunnel entrances that the orbital scans had missed. Former soldiers like Betty White and Carl Johnson fought alongside active Marines with a coordination that impressed the professional troops in the deepest part of the Hive complex. Sergeant Danny Carter's squad found the chambers where the Vorthok had been keeping human prisoners. What they saw there made even hardened combat veterans angry. The bugs hadn't just been taking people for food. They had been using humans as breeding hosts for their young. "Call in an orbital strike on this entire section," Danny ordered. "Nothing comes out of here alive." The rescue operation became an extermination mission. The Marines and colonists worked together to identify every tunnel, every chamber, every possible hiding place where Vorthok might survive. Then Lieutenant Rachel Kim's orbital bombardment turned those locations into molten craters. By the time the sun rose over New Harmony, the Vorthok swarm no longer existed. For hours and 37 minutes after the first fighter had entered the atmosphere, the last bug was dead, and the colony was secure. The human fleet had accomplished something the Galactic Council would have considered impossible. They had completely eliminated a hostile alien species from an entire star system in less than 5 hours, and they had done it while rescuing every surviving human colonist. When Colonel Reeves made her final report to Captain Harrison, she included an observation that would change how Earth Defense Command thought about colony protection. "Sir, these colonists didn't need rescuing, they needed backup." The Galactic Council Mercy Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system exactly 7 days after receiving Commander Martinez's original distress call. Captain Silerea of the hospital ship Gentle Dawn expected to find a colony under siege, with frightened refugees waiting for evacuation and medical treatment instead. Her sensors detected 3 massive human warships in orbit around the planet, their weapon systems still warm from recent use. The surface of New Harmony showed the unmistakable signs of orbital bombardment, dozens of large craters where something had been completely destroyed. "This cannot be correct," Silerea said to her medical staff as they reviewed the sensor data. "The diplomatic mission to the Vorthok Collective was supposed to arrange a ceasefire. There should not have been any military action. Her communications officer, a young Santorian named Colvin, looked confused as he tried to contact the human ships. Captain, the humans are responding to our hails, but they're treating this like a completed military operation, not an ongoing emergency. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Captain Rick Harrison watched the council ships approach with a mixture of amusement and irritation. He had been expecting this moment since the battle ended 2 days ago. Council fleet, this is Captain Harrison of the Terran defense ship Vengeance, he said into his communications system. New Harmony colony is secure? All threats have been eliminated. You can stand down your emergency response. The reply that came back from Captain Silareo was filled with confusion. Captain Harrison, we are here to provide humanitarian assistance and arrange peaceful evacuation of the human colonists. Our diplomatic team has been negotiating with the Vorthok Collective for a ceasefire agreement. Harrison almost laughed. Captain, there is no Vorthok Collective anymore. We eliminated the entire infestation 4 days ago. Colonists are rebuilding their homes, not evacuating them. When the council ships reached orbit around New Harmony, the alien crews got their first close look at what human military intervention looked like. The planet's surface was covered with glass craters where hive complexes had been melted by orbital bombardment. Construction crews were already working to repair damaged buildings, while human engineers installed new defensive systems around the colony. Ambassador Tilron led a diplomatic team down to the planet's surface, expecting to find traumatized refugees in need of counseling and care. Instead, he found Commander Martinez supervising the installation of anti-aircraft weapons while colonists worked alongside Marines to strengthen the colony's defenses. Commander Martinez, the ambassador said, his translator device struggling. With the concept of what he was seeing, we came to provide evacuation assistance. Our medical teams are prepared to help your people recover from this traumatic experience. Lisa Martinez looked at the tall, thin alien with genuine confusion. Traumatic experience, Ambassador? We won. The bugs are dead, our people are safe, and we're making sure this never happens again. What exactly do you think we need to recover from? The cultural clash was immediate and complete. Ambassador Tilron had expected to find a colony of victims grateful for rescue. Instead, he found a community of fighters who had participated in the complete destruction of their enemies, and were proud of it. But surely your people need counseling after witnessing such violence, the ambassador insisted. Our medical teams specialize in treating post-combat trauma and helping civilians adjust to peaceful relocation. Peaceful relocation? Martinez repeated, her voice getting harder. This is our home. We built it. We defended it, and we're keeping it. As for trauma counseling, the only trauma around here is what we gave to the bugs that tried to eat our families. Dr. Yelenat, the council's chief medical officer, tried to approach Betty White, the grandmother who had fought throughout the siege. The alien doctor had prepared treatments for what her species considered the inevitable psychological damage from exposure to violence. Mrs. White, Dr. Yelenat said gently, I understand you experienced combat during the attack. Our medical team can help you process these difficult memories. Betty looked up from cleaning her rifle, a weapon she had kept from her military service decades ago. Process what memories? Honey, I shot 47 bugs that were trying to hurt my neighbors. Best shooting I've done in years. My only regret is that there weren't more of them. The medical team was horrified. In their experience, exposure to violence left lasting psychological scars that required careful treatment. This elderly human female was talking about killing as if it had been a sporting event. Meanwhile, Admiral Kate Sullivan had arrived aboard her flagship to oversee the establishment of a permanent defense station in the system. She met with the council leadership in New Harmony's rebuilt command center, where the differences between human and galactic approaches to security became obvious. Admiral, said Zefter, the council's emergency coordinator, while we appreciate your rapid response to this crisis, your methods were somewhat extreme. The complete elimination of the Vorthok presence was not necessary. Our diplomatic team could have arranged a peaceful resolution. Admiral Sullivan stared at the alien official for a long moment before responding. Peaceful resolution? These bugs were harvesting our people for food, and using them as breeding hosts for their young. The only resolution they understood was complete extermination. But surely negotiation could have achieved a better outcome, Zephyr argued. Violence should always be the last resort, used only when all other options have been exhausted. You're right, Sullivan agreed. Violence should be the last resort. For civilized beings who can be reasoned with. When someone tries to eat your children, negotiation time is over. The council representatives struggled to understand this mindset. In their experience, conflicts arose from misunderstandings, or resource disputes that could be resolved through careful discussion. The idea that some enemies simply had to be destroyed was foreign to their peaceful civilization. Captain Silarea tried to offer medical assistance to the human Marines who had fought in the underground battles. She expected to find soldiers suffering from the psychological effects of close combat in confined spaces. Instead, she found Sergeant Danny Carter teaching colonist children how to maintain their family's emergency weapons. "Sergeant," she said, "our medical scans show that you and your men experienced significant stress during the tunnel fighting. We have treatments that can help reduce the long-term effects of combat exposure." Danny looked at the alien doctor with the same confusion that all the humans seemed to share when talking to the council representatives. "Ma'am, with respect, we're soldiers. Fighting in bad situations is our job. The only stress we have is making sure we killed every last bug so they can't hurt these families again." The cultural gap became even more obvious when the council team tried to understand the human approach to colony defense. Ambassador Tilrun suggested that New Harmony should be relocated to a safer system, away from potential threats. "This system clearly has hostile life forms," he explained to Commander Martinez. "The logical solution is to move your people to a location where such conflicts cannot occur." Martinez gestured toward the construction crews installing weapon emplacements around the colony. "Ambassador, every system has potential threats. The solution isn't to run away every time something dangerous shows up. The solution is to make sure you're ready to fight and win when danger comes calling. But surely, peaceful coexistence is preferable to constant preparation for war," Tilron argued. "Peace through strength," Martinez replied. "We want to live peacefully, but peace is something you have to be strong enough to defend." The bugs learned that lesson the hard way. As the council fleet prepared to depart, having been politely but firmly told that their assistance was not needed, the alien crews struggled to write reports that would make sense to their superiors. How could they explain a species that viewed complete military victory as a normal response to threats? Zephyr's final report to the Galactic Council contained a recommendation that would change how the galaxy dealt with human colonies. Humans do not require rescue in the traditional sense. When threatened, they require military support for offensive operations. Future human distress calls should be forwarded immediately to Terran Defense Command rather than processed through standard humanitarian channels. Admiral Sullivan remained in the system with a permanent defense fleet, establishing New Harmony as a forward base for protecting human colonies in the region. Her final message to Earth Defense Command summarized the human position. "The galaxy is full of threats that can't be negotiated with. Our job is to make sure everyone knows what happens when they threaten human lives." The council ships departed. With a new understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy, these weren't refugees who needed gentle protection. They were a warrior species that protected themselves and would respond to any threat with overwhelming force. New Harmony continued to grow and prosper, now protected by both its armed colonists and a permanent military presence. The colony became a symbol throughout human space of what happened when Earth's children called for help. They didn't get gentle rescue missions. They got backup from the deadliest military force in the galaxy.